Narayan Maskritam Naram Chevanottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Titojo Dhyare Nishta Parayashu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Atama Shoki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Nigamaka Paduragaritam Fanam Shuka Makaramita Dravisamitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rashamariyam Mahora Horishi Bhuvakam Krishna Swadama Bhagate Damagini Hesha Karana Stadu Shamasha Parana Kodunodidaham Twamapiya Padusuta Vishatam Vibhusam Yapyarana Vidam Viduksaram Prakyahito Mararinam Sankleshana Vanamusanti Nadyatam Om Aganati Manandasya Ganangana Salakya Chaksurun Militam Yanatashmai Srigaravedamam Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamyam Darati Swapanadikam Mandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shivishakan Vitam Stam Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadine Nirvashesa Sanyavadi Praskatade Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Transcendental Tuesday. Subhadra, thank you for coming back day after day. Rakesh, Raleigh, right here in Spanish Fork. Thank you all so much for joining us on this special Transcendental Tuesday. Rakesh, Vaibhavi. We're in a very key verse. We've entitled today's segment, Vyasadev is troubled. So if the compiler of all the Vedic literatures covering all areas of phenomenal and noumenal life is troubled, then we should also be troubled about the fact that he's troubled. Here's the verse again. It's the 8th verse, 5th chapter, 1st canto of the Bhagavatam. We're revisiting it for the 2nd day in a row, and I'm pretty sure we'll be coming back to this same fountain tomorrow as well. Bhavatana dito prayam yasho bhaganamanam yanayvashu natusheta manye prad darshanam kilam. Translated, Sri Narada, who is the guru of Vyasadev. I heard something very interesting last night. We accept Buddha as an avatar, Shaktavish avatar of Krishna. And we also accept Vyasadev as a Shaktavish avatar of Krishna. He's Mahamuni Kimba Parayasharaha. He's a literary incarnation of God. No normal human being could have compiled all the Vedic literatures and then topped it off with the Nigamak Amala Purana, the spotless Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's not within the capabilities of a normal human being. He's a literary incarnation of God. So we accept both as incarnation, both Buddha and Vyasadeva, but we don't accept Buddha's teachings. Buddha's teachings are essentially atheistic. He rejected the Vedas, and by the force of his own personality, he became self-realized, and then promoted nonviolence, tried to stop the animal slaughter that was prevalent at that time. He was an incarnation of God, but he was actually preaching atheism in order to get people to follow more humane principles, because it doesn't do any good to follow the scripture if you're misusing the scripture, misquoting the scripture to suit your own twisted sensual purposes. And so it was part of Buddha's mission that he had to toss out the scripture and promote metta, compassion, ahimsa, nonviolence, on the force of his own personality. And eventually then Sankaracharya, 500 years later, got people back to the Vedas, and then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got people back to a personalistic conception of the Vedas. Sometimes it's said that Buddha built the foundation, Sankaracharya built the temple, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu installed the deities. So we accept Buddha as an avatar, we accept Vyasadeva as an avatar, but we don't follow the teachings of Buddha. We reject the teachings of Buddha. Whereas we accept the teachings of Vyasadeva. And when you look at the two, there's one major difference that jumps out at you. Here it is, in case you haven't guessed already. Do you want to put it in the comments? Shall I give you a moment to guess, to write in what's the main difference between Vyasadeva and Buddha? Why we accept the teachings of one and not the teachings of the other? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'll tell you. Vyasadeva had a guru, Sri Nada Uvacha. In fact, Vyasadev's teachings, the entire body of the Vedic literature, is not nearly as exalted and as elevated, does not hit the mark to the extent that the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what's the difference? Srimad Bhagavatam, he had this special encounter. He had this consultation session. Just like we were feeling a little under the weather, you schedule an appointment with your doctor. He gets you back, maybe even if he's a holistic doctor, an Ayurvedic doctor, he just doesn't treat you allopathically, but he treats you homeopathically, gets rid of the contaminants that are in you and brings you out of that sickness more radiantly healthy than you were before you got sick. That's what's happening here. Vyasadeva, after having compiled all the Vedic literatures, is feeling troubled, feeling disquiet, despondency. Can you imagine? And of course, he's an incarnation of God, so all these things are up to question. Just like Arjuna was put into illusion while he's an eternal companion of Krishna. I don't know how much he could really be illusioned, but he's playing the role in order to teach us a lesson so we can learn through Arjuna. So the role that Vyasadeva is playing is that his literatures were all pretty much on the mundane level. In fact, just like first thing Krishna did after Arjuna surrendered to him, Sishyas teham sarimam tam prapanam, Arjuna gave up all his own speculations, which were of a lower level, a material level, and he said, now I'm surrendered to you, Krishna. I want you to tell me what's what and clear up this confusion. And then the first words out of Krishna's mouth were words of chastisement. And that's the role of the guru. He needs to point out what the disciple is going wrong so that the disciple can be corrected, get back into a more wholesome state of mind. The doctor has to do the same thing. I just had a doctor's appointment the other day. Dr. Jeffrey Ogden in Orem, great guy, primary physician. They have a lab right in his office, so first thing you do, you've been fasting, you get blood tests. And you sit in there, and after a while he comes in with all the results of the lab tests right on the spot within 15 or 20 minutes. So he was very happy because my cholesterol's gone down considerably in the last 12 months. He was delighted about that. All the elements, nitrogen, oxygen, creatinine and everything, thyroid, all that stuff for a 74-year-old guy is really in good shape, really in the healthy range. But the blood pressure was 152 over 76. So he said, I don't want you walking around at risk. You got to do something about this. And I said, well, I exercise, I eat right. He says, you got to exercise more, do more aerobic, get your heart rate up. Go 80% of your heart rate for a sustained period of time. Do that 3 times a week. And he was really concerned, and he was also critical that I wasn't doing enough. That if I wanted to get out of risk for a negative heart episode, I had to do more exercise, eat more healthy, and incidentally prescribe one little extra bit of medication as well. So analogously, that's what's happening with Vyasadeva. You know, he's been functioning on a certain level, but it hasn't given him what he thinks he should have as a part and parcel of the Lord. And so he goes to his guru, he expresses his confusion, his dissatisfaction, and just like with Arjuna, Krishna's first words after Arjuna surrendered to him were asochams nan basochams pragnabanam yatasams nenum sochita pandiva. First thing is the disciple the guru chastised the disciple. And so he says, you are mourning for, while claiming to be a learned man by speaking all these learned words, you're actually mourning for what is not worthy of grief. That's the first thing. He put him in his place. You're an ordinary living being. You are not Vedaham Samadhitani. You're not Sarvatri Kalikya. You don't know past, present, and future. That's me. That's my role as God. And when we try to play God, we inevitably get in hot water. We get in over our head. So the first thing the Lord does is establish the priorities, the pecking orders. Similarly, pretty much right after Vyasadev kind of unloads himself to Narada, Narada says, Bhavatono dito prayam yasho. He says this verse and another one. Yasho bhagavatam malam yenai. You have failed to describe the spotless glories of the Lord. And therefore you have also failed to satisfy the hearts of all living beings. Not only that, here comes the tough part for Vyasadeva to hear. I could only imagine. Jagupsidam dharma krinana shashita shabhava raktashima yadbhakyato dharma titara namanyate tasya nivaranam jaham. He says, not only have you not satisfied the innermost persons of the living beings, the innermost selves of the living beings, but you've misled them. Because people come into this material world wanting to be independent of God, wanting to experience duality, and you have encouraged them. You have given them the tools whereby they can promote their own sense gratification, elevation to the heavenly planets. Evam bhutva shargaloka bisham sinya mutya varkalovishi evam tayudharma gadikadums kamakaba lamante. You have done a disservice because you have encouraged them towards sense gratification. And that's the job of the guru. Now, as I said, we reject the teachings of Buddha because he didn't have a guru. But we embrace wholeheartedly the teachings of Vyasadeva, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, because he's got it right. He came to the end of his rope, then he prostrated himself at the feet of his guru. Then his guru analyzed, diagnosed the situation, checked the lab results, and gave his opinion, which might have been slightly difficult for Vyasadeva to hear. It might have made him slightly uncomfortable, but it was like giving birth, and nobody ever gave birth comfortably. Giving birth is an uncomfortable process, but how we love the result. What a glorious result when we hold that child in our hands. And so, as a result of this difficult, uncomfortable conversation between Narada Muni and Vyas, we have what was birthed was the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the absolute truth. Lakshmi, thanks for joining us this morning. What thoughts do you have in this connection?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just joined you, but nothing comes to mind right now. Sorry. I'm just getting focused on what you're saying.
We jump forward, having spent 9 sessions on the 17th and 18th verse in the 4th chapter. We jump forward to the 8th verse in the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is our second day on it. Well, right from the very beginning, Vyasadeva is letting us know, he's putting us on notice that if you've enjoyed my previous books, this one is unlike anything I've ever written before. This one, according to the advice of my guru, is going to, there's going to be the encouragement, the trend towards sense gratification is going to be conspicuous by its absence. And if you're familiar with the Mahabharata, many of the same stories are in both the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata. However, the Mahabharata blends in, weaves into the fabric of the narrative, Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha. It's called the 5th Veda. So therefore it supports and reinforces the same goals and ambitions that were there in the Veda. It just makes it more palatable, more accessible to a public who's not very philosophically astute. But then many of the same stories from the Mahabharata are retold in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the context of the pure devotee Maharaj Parikshit listening to the pure devotee Sukadeva Goswami during the last 7 days of his life. And how different is the flavor of those same stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam. How differently do pure devotees view those same incidents, incorporate them, and then communicate them to others. So Vyasadeva puts us on notice from the very second verse of the Bhagavatam. Dharma projito kaitavo tra nimatsaranam Vedyam Vashtamatravistam Shivanam Tapara Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kambirish Sadyo Didi Avarudite Tra Kridivishu Jubish Tatsana. This Bhagavatam, unlike the Vedas, unlike the Mahabharata, is rejecting all religious activities, directions, and conclusions which are materially motivated. Rather, it propounds the highest truth, which is understood by satam, those devotees who are pure in heart. It is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. It uproots the threefold miseries of this material world, and this book in itself, should you never read the Vedas, should you never read the Mahabharata, with the exception of the Bhagavad Gita, of course, you can still achieve everything that's achievable, desirable for the human, the soul in the human form of the body. And then it is asked, even in the verse itself, Vyasadev asked the question, what is the need for any other scripture? Because as soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is active within the heart. When he sees from within the heart that you're hearing the Bhagavatam from bona fide sources, the Lord sits up. He takes notice after who knows how many incarnations where you've turned your back on the Lord, distanced yourself from the Lord, acted towards him in a formal way, maybe only invoked him when you got in trouble and then dismissed him when the trouble was over. Now he sees, Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lodavish. Now he sees that after such a long period of forgetfulness and indifference, that you're now taking it upon yourself to follow the prescribed process. Evam param praptav imam raja. Find a guru, or rather let the guru find you. Let the guru, like Krishna, recognize, intimate your newfound sincerity and send the guru along to guide you on the path back to home, back to Godhead. This is the notice that Vyasadev is given right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Does that provoke any thoughts in your devotion?
Yes, it does. It sure does. Yesterday we were talking about Radha Govinda. Govinda, what is the meaning of Govinda, etc. And one of the points I was making was the Rupa Goswami talks about the angas of devotional service. And then he specifically underscores he calls them the 5 very powerful angas of bhakti. And what is one of those angas? Exactly what you're talking about, the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he boils it down that if you do, and the other thing, which is really nice, not a Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada, in the mood of Rupa Goswami, he has given us a whole facility to practice those 5 angas. Regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, like when we grew up in the ashram, right? Every morning, right? Where were we? We went to Mangalarti. We chanted our japa. Then there was greeting of the deities and Guru Puja, and then Bhagavatam, depending on which temple you were in. Some of them had it before and others had it after. But regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, both in Kirtan Japa, and then Sadhu Sangha, and then after Sadhu Sangha, Tirtha, visiting the holy place of Vrindavan Dham, and then deity worship. So this Bhagavatam is so important that Rupa Goswami says these 5 most powerful limbs of bhakti can connect us to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord.
And the purifying effect of the Bhagavatam is so powerful that no other literature is needed. I remember hearing it said that if you need to go pick up something at the pharmacy and you have a bicycle, the one bicycle is enough. You don't need 5 bicycles. So if you have one bicycle and it will get you to the pharmacy and get you what you need, why in the world would you want 5 bicycles? So in the same way, if Vyasadev is saying that this Bhagavatam in and of itself is sufficient for God realization, then why would you waste your time? In fact, get your consciousness fragmented, Bogaishwarya Pashaktaram Taya Parita Shamadodavriya Samada, Why would you fragment your consciousness by splaying it out all over the place? Bahu shakaya nantascha. Better be single-pointed. If the Bhagavatam itself is capable and competent to get you back to home, back to Godhead, then it wouldn't make sense for you to then dabble in other literatures. Now, this same Narada Muni who's getting Vyasadev back on the right track, taking him to the next level, acting as a midwife to birth his summum opus, his highest life's literary achievement, this same Narada Muni talks about the effects of practicing the angas, the limbs, as you said, of devotional service. One of the immediate effects should be, as is stated in the Narada Pancharatra, Sarva Padi Vinirmaktam Tattvapena Nirmanam Rishikesha Rishikena Sevanam Bhaktir Uchate. One should stop thinking of oneself in terms of designations. Black, white, male, female, even religious designations are anartas. Religion, Muslim, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, they can be helpful up to a certain point. Like we all go to college. And many people think that college is a necessary prerequisite for living a good, meaningful life, paying your taxes, raising children, being a good spouse, all the disciplines and everything that involves going to college, the habits that you develop, stand you in good stead in real life. But you're not meant to stay in college all of your life and become a professional student. You know, sometimes we meet people that have 5 degrees or 6 degrees, and it's like, that's impressive. They're certainly very smart, but then you kind of think like, are you ever going to get out into the real world? You know, or are you just going to shelter in the ivy halls of academia all your life? What are you afraid of? So Krishna says, Sarvadhamam parityaga mame kam sanarabhaja. What is the test? What is the litmus test of the religion that you're following? Like, what is the test? You're in Harvard, or you're at University of Utah, or you're at University of Colorado. What is the test? It prepares you to get out into the real world, right? It doesn't cater to your insecurities and your fears, but it equips you and emboldens you to make your mark in the real world. So similarly, the test of Christianity, Hinduism, Muslimism is whether you can graduate, whether you can go from the shelter of a religious institution and go out and perform your mission, preach the glories of the Lord in a systematized, if possible, institutionalized way, and make a difference in the lives of other people. Prabhupada said, if you get a degree from Harvard, or you get a degree from University of Pennsylvania, you get a degree from Berkeley, doesn't matter what college you got your degree from. Point is, you get your degree, then you go out there and you fulfill your function as a citizen, as a husband, as an employer, as an employee. So religion is not the last word. We read yesterday that Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the last word in religion. Being a good Christian or a Hindu is far from being the last word. Being a professional student, at some point, if you don't get out there and use what you've learned, it's not laudable. You can praise someone for their first degree, you can praise someone for their second degree, but if they're working on their third degree and they've been in college for like 12 years, it's like, you know, you're still getting, mom and dad are still paying your way. And you're still in the sheltered classroom environment. When are you gonna get serious, you know? So Narada Muni asked Vyasadev, you know, when are you gonna get serious about escape, about ultimate liberation? We read about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya the next morning, after Lord Chaitanya told him the direct meaning of the Vedas. He came to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya wanted to test his newfound bhakti. So Lord Chaitanya had some prasadam, and he gave it to him, and Sarvabhauma hadn't taken his bath, so he wanted to see whether Sarvabhauma was going to adhere to the religious codes, the rules and regulations, as he would have before he met Lord Chaitanya, or whether he was now illuminated by bhakti. Sarvabhauma passed the test. He immediately took the prasadam without having taken his bath. And from this incident, Lord Chaitanya could intimate that Sarvabhaumacharya had graduated from religion to a relationship. And that's what Vyasadev is warning us about. He says, if you want more religious rules and regulations, if you want to pick up a book that tells you how good a religionist you are, how good a person you are, you better not touch the Bhagavatam, because the Bhagavatam is going to tell you how good, in fact, how transcendental the Lord is, and how you need to graduate from all lower forms of designated religious practice and all sorts of material attachments and affiliations, and fall head over heels in love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, set the mood of exhibiting the madness of love of God. He explained himself on one occasion, I think it was to Prakasananda, when Prakasananda asked him, why are you going out in the streets causing this ruckus, you know? We're not supposed to rock the boat. Everybody does their religious practices for their rewards in the heavenly planets or to become one with the Lord. What place does singing and dancing the names of the Lord have in a monistic society or a fruitive work society? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I don't know what place I have. I don't know what I'm doing. I just got this mantra from my guru, and after chanting it, I became mad after love of God. I don't even know what's going on here. I'm going to have to go back and ask him to explain it to me. Lord Chaitanya was, not only was he talking about the need to have a relationship as opposed to a religion, but he was also, by saying, I don't know what's going on here, it's quite funny. It's tongue in cheek. He's saying, you don't have to understand it. You don't have to be a big academicist, a big philosopher. Anybody can taste the nectar of love of God if you're sincere and if you're hooked up in the right way. Look at the change in Sarvabhauma. He gave up philosophy. Oh yeah, and my point was that Sarvabhauma then, after taking the prasadam, quoted the verse. What is it? Yashahum anugrahama hirishatadharami. Anyway, mukti pada. Mukti pada. The last word of the verse was that one who takes whatever the Lord sends his way as the mercy of the Lord and doesn't complain is eligible for mukti. And Sarvabhauma, the scholar, said to the Lord, I've changed out the word mukti for bhakti. Because bhakti is higher. Bhakti is the ultimate goal of the human form of life. And bhakti includes mukti. Mukti is the maidservant holding the train of the bride.
Very nice. Yeah, and along the lines of what you're saying is it's the difference between jnana and vijnana. It's the difference between theoretical knowledge. That's like the person who is forever the student in getting all this theoretical knowledge, and then the person who actually vijnana has realized knowledge, has realization. And in the learning process, according to the Vedas, we first have to hear, and that's the first step in the learning process. The second is the reflection on what you've heard. You hear something and then you reflect upon it. And they say, like a lot of people are avid note takers, and they say if you read your notes within like 8 hours or so of the when you took the notes, then the chances of you recalling what's in those notes are much, much higher, much greater. So hearing, reflecting, and then assimilating. The next thing is to assimilate what you've heard and what you've reflected upon into your life. And it doesn't just stop there. Assimilating means, of course, I put it into effect. I put it into practice. The last one is sharing. And Prabhupada has given us that wonderful cycle. And I think one of the reasons I have stayed in the preaching fire all these years is because I'm very selfish. When I take that knowledge that Prabhupada has given us in the purports of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and then I speak it to somebody, then it sticks. It really does stick. And that's very consistent, with the four aspects of knowledge, acquiring knowledge: hearing, reflection, assimilation, and sharing that knowledge. So this is the importance of what we're doing. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu certainly demonstrated that in his lifetime, the 48 years. He broke open the storehouse of love of Godhead and distributed its contents freely to even those who were deserving and those who were not deserving of it.
And we have to thank Prashant in that connection, because if you're not personally taking notes, Prashant is leaving connections. He's leaving references. He's putting up links. He's already got the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhaumacharya. He's already got that verse, Tate nukampam shishamikshanan punjane vatmakritam vipra ridbhagvu buddhir vidada yo bhakti pada sajaya muk. That used to be mukti pada, but it was changed to bhakti pada. So check out the notes that Prashant very mercifully is sharing with you so that you may reflect upon them and assimilate them within 8 days. Don't leave more than 8 days, according to Lakshmi. Again, Narada Muni is saying that the characteristic of this material world of conditioned souls is that everybody is contaminated by various designations in relationship to the body or in relationship to the mind. People are thinking, I belong to such and such a country. I belong to a certain society. I belong to a certain gender, a certain ethnicity, a certain family. But when one comes to the stage of pure devotional service, he knows that he doesn't belong to anything or anybody except Krishna. I belong to Krishna. I am bought and sold, just like a cow out in the field is bought and sold. That cow belongs to that family. Whatever that family wants to do to that cow, the cow has no choice. The mind frame of the cow, the mentality of the cow is, whatever they want to do, I won't protest, I'll surrender. And the cow knows, at least traditionally, that it's protected. It's viewed as a valued member of the family. In India, they call the cow as Go Mataji. She's like a second mother to us. And a cow that knows it's not going to be exploited, not going to be killed for its meat, is a very happy cow. A cow that can literally moisten the fields with the overflowing milk from her tits, milk which you can drink to get strong bones and finer tissues within the brain. If someone knows they're not going to be killed, rather protected and valued, they can work very well. But if they think that their employer is at some point going to kill them, that's going to affect their work at every stage. So when the cows are protected, they're very happy. There's an abundance of milk. With an abundance of milk, there's good brain power to understand God consciousness. There is a Brahminical culture which is maintained and nourished by that. Therefore, there's peace, prosperity, and harmony. But none of it is allowed when everybody is dug in to a material designation. People often criticize religion and cite the number of wars and conflicts that have arisen because of religious differences of opinion, of dogma, and views, which illustrates the point I'm making that we don't need another religion, but we all need another higher level of relationship with God. Early on in Prabhupada's mission, I think it was the University of California at Berkeley, someone challengingly asked him after a talk, we have so many religions in America, what can you possibly bring to us that we don't have already? Prabhupada said, you have forgotten God. Although there are so many churches and denominations, there are many church buildings. America, there's the freedom of religion. There's the First Amendment. There are many churches. Churches have prospered throughout the entire history of America. We're For instance, a 501c3. Churches are exempted from income tax because churches have the blessings. The state and the church may not mix, but in America, the churches have the blessings to do their work, and the state recognizes that by the church increasing the faith in people and doing their charitable work, it takes some of the burden off of the government. So they work in tandem. They complement each other. That's recognized. But at the same time, we see so much conflict and so much difference of opinion. Even in the recent political campaigns, the interests of the church-going people has spilled over into the political area, and not for the better, I'll tell you, not for the better. The church, in order to promote its own material designated interests, has gotten into bed with a person whose activities are obviously not on a moral standard, who obviously has serious moral shortcomings. And we find that the church in America, the standard church, has gotten into bed with someone who is very, very morally compromised in almost every area. Sexual, marital, financial, in every single area. And this is not a good thing. So getting Krishna conscious, awakening your relationship with the Lord will help overcome this designated sectarian mentality. It'll relieve the hate, the mistrust, the suspicion that's not decreasing, but it's increasing. As we said, there's plenty of churches and denominations, and there's plenty of hate, and there's plenty of sectarianism, and there's plenty of suspicion and mistrust. But when we come to the level of loving God, then all that disappears. Kechit kevada bhakta Vyasadeva parayanaham. When we begin to take shelter of the lotus feet, folks, there's a person who has feet, and we need to take shelter at those feet as humble servants. Kechit kevada Vyasadeva parayanaham. When we shelter at the feet of the personality of Godhead, niharamiva bhaskara, all unwanted, murky, confusing things are dissipated, just like the rising sun dissipates the fog. And we need to recognize at the end of the day, where do our senses come from? We've covered our senses, calling them Christian or Hindu or Muslim or Jew or black or white. What is the origin of the senses? Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam, Bhaktir, Uchate. God is a sentient being. Over and over and over. He's a person. He's a person. He has senses. We're produced from him. So our senses originate from God. That means he owns us. He owns our senses. The senses are not yours to do what you want with them whimsically. They are gifted to you by God. And if and when we connect back to him by using our talents and our abilities to honor him and glorify him, then there will begin to be peace and harmony in the world. Example is given if you have a compass. There's one sharp point and then there's one pencil, and it'll draw a circle. So if you keep moving the center point of the compass, then all the circles will clash. But if you keep the center point of the compass in one place, you can draw a circle which is 1 inch in diameter, another which is 2 inches in diameter, another which is 3 inches in diameter, and they're all concurrent. There's no conflict, there's no clashing. So when we acknowledge that the goal of life is not to be a card-carrying, church, temple, mosque, attending, critical, judgmenting, sour-faced person who thinks everybody else is wrong and you're right. But the goal is to graduate from this or that religion, this or that religious practice, and fall in love with God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada says here, originally all the senses are produced from the Lord's reservoir of senses. Therefore, the sensual activities in the material world are to be purified by the process of devotional service, and thus the perfection of life can be attained by purifying the present position of our activities. And that purified category of activities begins from being liberated from all material designations. Jivera svarupa haya nitya Krishna dasa. This is the only way that one needs to think of oneself. Jivera svarupa haya, I am small, I am infinitesimal. At the same time, because I'm small, it doesn't mean I don't have senses. It doesn't mean I don't have individuality, I don't have personality. Within a tiny microscopic seed of a banyan tree, there's a whole banyan tree in there. So my smallness does not take individuality and sensuously off the board. Jivara svarupa haya. I'm small, but I have a form, I have an individual, a personality. And where did I come from? Nitya Krishna dasa. I am an eternal servant of the Lord. When we click into that designation, when we think of ourselves as spiritual beings, parts and parcels of the Lord, then you'll begin to see some of the relief of the tensions that have been building up due to overly identifying with material designations. Are we wrong or were we right?
Right on. Spot on. And that's why Krishna is called Govinda. You know, he's protector of the cows, he's the attractor of the senses and the land. So Govinda, that one name can attract our senses. That personality who's the guardian of the cows, that personality who roams the idyllic pasture grounds of Braj, blessing all living entities with his sublimely beautiful darshan. That personality, we take shelter of that personality, and we are completely satisfied.
Speaking of Krishna as Go-Brahmanya, as a lover of the cows and the origin of the senses, Ram Kishore has dropped a very interesting tidbit of information here. I did not know, but he says Pope Francis, that's the current Pope, is that right?
Yeah.
He's a vegetarian. Did you know that?
I heard some things about him that were quite remarkable. You know,
Ram Kishore is telling us he's a vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly a good start in the right direction.
Oh, definitely.
Unless and until one recognizes the same spiritual essence in the bodies of all living beings, one cannot overcome one's own designations. One has, by seeing oneself as a spirit soul, vidya vina sampane brahmanaga suni chaiva shupati cha pandita savadarshana. As one cultivates devotional service, and along with devotional service come detachment and knowledge, it becomes abundantly clear to the practitioner that all living beings are dear to the Lord, that they're all parts and parcels of the Lord. Wherever we find life, life is sacred. Devotee does not even unnecessarily kill a cockroach or step on an ant because he recognizes there's a part of God in the body of that living being. Prabhupada told about during the Hindu-Muslim riots in 1948 during the partition of India. Hindus killed Muslims and Muslims killed Hindus. And then when the body gatherers came and they someone picked up the body by the legs and someone picked up the body and they throw them into a vehicle to take them away for cremation. He said, you couldn't tell who's a Hindu or Muslim. During the riots, a Hindu would say, there's a Muslim, let's get him. And then a Muslim would say, oh, there's a Hindu, let's get him. But once they're all lying dead in the street, you couldn't tell which was a Hindu or which was a Muslim. The fact is, they weren't Hindus, they weren't Muslims, they were spirit souls. But because of material designations, they thought that they were striking a blow in favor of God by destroying the body of someone. That body was designated Hindu or that body was designated Muslim. The fact is, the more one becomes learned by the service of the Lord, the more one sees all living beings as dear, and less one discriminates based on the external body. Vidya vina sampane, one who is actually a knowledge, who is illuminated by the knowledge of serving the Lord, sees living beings equally. Brahma, Gavi, Hasni, Suni, Chaiva, Shubhakija. What are all those different types of outer bodies that the learned devotee sees equally, Lakshmi?
The cow, the Brahmin, the dog eater,
The,
all of those,
the elephant.
elephant, they're all seen equally. And you know, even there's a very interesting verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which indicates that even one's intelligence can become one's guru. Now, what does that actually mean? Because that could actually be a dangerous statement. If it leads one to the understand, like for instance, you take personalities in American history, for instance, like Henry David Thoreau, or even Jonathan Chapman, who was better known as Johnny Appleseed. Those two in particular were kind of like ascetics in some regard. That Jonathan Chapman, Johnny Appleseed, he just wandered around, and basically his main goal in life was to plant apple trees and have them produce fruit, etc. Both of them, it's not a coincidence, both of them were vegetarian. Both of them, by interacting with nature, putting themselves out in nature and interacting, their intelligence, of course, that means they were leading probably more of a sattvic lifestyle than most people were, and the fact that they were interacting with nature, etc. They began to see the connectedness. So, you know, our intelligence, when it's covered by passion, passion means attachment, passion means creation, and ignorance means to ignore. That all of these things, it causes us to see according to the designation. Oh, you're a Hindu, or you're a Muslim, or you're black, or you're white. The more we become absorbed in the designation, in our own designations, then we become very expert at picking out the designations of others. Whereas a person who is at least making some little advancement will immediately begin to see, you know, the cow, the dog eater, etc. That life, and that life as generated from the supreme life, God.
Now, you can only eat the flesh of the animal if you deny the soul. You can't acknowledge that that animal is a divine spark of God, beloved of God, and then go ahead and eat the flesh of the animal. So it's a given that meat eaters will, from the very beginning, rationalize their practice of eating the flesh of a living being by denying animals the soul. It's not the fruit of any sort of introspective philosophical inquiry or search, just the opposite from it. It's a knee-jerk reaction, which is subordinate to the tongue. The tongue wants to taste flesh, and so therefore there is no soul within the animal.
Yeah.
And then it says, Nirvita Tarshera Bhagiyamana Bhavoshodo Chotamna Ka Tamashoka Panram Virajata Vina Pashudna. Who would resist or be indifferent to the ecstatic glorification of the Lord, which leads you to a relationship to the Lord, to a life of eternity, bliss, and knowledge? I mean, who would be indifferent to that opportunity which is available, except for someone who eats meat? And someone who eats meat, who kills animals, is also the killer of the soul. You kill animals, you kill yourself, because you take yourself off the table. You make yourself ineligible. You disqualify yourself for any sort of higher thinking. That's why when Prabhupada met Cardinal Danilou, as a top Catholic of the whole Church of France, Cardinal Danilou wanted to talk about higher metaphysical subjects, and Prabhupada said, you want to talk metaphysics? You want to talk metaphysics? Okay. Physics is the body, meta is above the body. So you want to talk metaphysics? There is a soul in the body of every animal, and in fact, animal means soul. When you say the animal has a soul, you're basically repeating yourself. It's a redundancy. He wouldn't let this cleric, the highest cleric practically in the whole country of France, he wouldn't let him off the hook. He just skewered him, and he kept twisting the knife. He said there is no possibility of talking or going on to higher subjects if you're a meat eater, because if you're eating meat, you're killing your own soul. So take care of your own soul first. get it back into a healthy, natural, wholesome condition of life, and then all these things will become pretty much self-evident to you. And that's what I want to talk about tomorrow, is how natural it is to see oneself as a servant of the Lord. Right now, we see ourselves in so many roles. It's got to be like depressing. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm an employer, I'm an employee, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. It just seems like after a certain point, you're just like, it's too much. It's too much weight to carry. Uh, Krishna is saying, throw it off. It's unnecessary. It's misleading. It's divisional. It plugs you up with hate and attachment and aversion. And when you just think of yourself in one way, I am nitya siddha Krishna, nitya svarupa Krishna das, and there's really only one person I have to please. I don't have to water each root, each leaf and twig and branch of the tree. I only have to put water on the root of the tree. Oh, what a relief. What a relief. So people sometimes have a reaction, well, I don't need Krishna. I've already got my church. I've already got my work, my kids. I don't need another responsibility. I don't need another burden on top of all the others. No, this is going to relieve you of all the burdens. This is going to put a smile on your face. This is going to lift you. You're going to levitate when you come to the level of aspiring to be an atom at the divine transcendental lotus feet of the Lord. Govinda, son of Nanda, though you're the one second to none, I'm heartbroken in the ocean of birth and death. It's not worth the commotion. Pull me out of this cruel blender, surrendered as an atom in the sweet splendor of your tender lotus feet. Lord, when will my eyes pour with tears of love like rain from the skies? When will my voice choke up invoking your name? When in transcendence will my bodily hairs stand on end? Though a moment appears like 12 years or more when you're not here, I've only to proclaim your name and I'm smiling again. Even if you restrain me by your embrace or pain me by hiding your face, you remain my Lord unconditionally. Decline or gain, rain or shine, I am yours and you are mine. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Krishna
sir.
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That was from the Sheep Shastakam by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, indicating to us how heartfeltedly and single-mindedly we should practice chanting the holy names of the Lord. And I needn't remind you that we're on the countdown now. This coming Sunday is the holiest, arguably the holiest day on our calendar, next to Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So can we encourage everyone to get more and more in the mood of chanting heartfeltedly, chanting without offenses, throwing off material artificial designations, and along with it hate and suspicion and mistrust and partyism, and dive into the ocean of devotion, of service to the supreme personality, the supreme sentient, read my lips, personality of Godhead. Any last words, Lakshmi? And then we'll ask you, Rob.
Yeah, the last words are Smeram Bangi Traya Parichitam Sachi Vistirnam.
Vamsi Nara Dara Vyasanam. Don't go to
Yes.
look at that threefold smiling face on the moonlight of the river Yamuna, because you will lose all attachment for family, friends.
That's it. Those are the famous last words.
Yes, indeed. The death, the death. It tolls for the death of all your confusion and all your anxiety and all your anger and all your hate. It's the death
Yes.
of all that's bad and the birth of all that's good and
And all your designations.
all your designate. Get your shovel out, because between now and Sunday, let's make a vow. We're going to bury all those designations. All this.
Absolutely.
Rob, give us a word from the Robster.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Harimo.
Hari.
This is a very full class today as far as information and knowledge of the divine, and it's definitely online with the class that was Saturday as far as your I am statements. and how our designations are very restricting. And the only designation that really matters is that I am part and parcel of Krishna, that I'm an eternal servant to Krishna. And for me personally, designations, you almost hide behind them. You definitely use them to define yourself and to try and give yourself a sense of importance and feed your ego, the false ego with them. And in order to overcome that, it's definitely important to focus that we are parts of Krishna, that is ultimately all we are, is parts of Krishna, different very minor manifestations of him. And that certainly helps me to face removing these designations, to stop using these I am statements of whatever it may be. I really appreciate that, because it takes a lot of weight off my shoulders to try and have to live up to these designations that I've placed upon myself, or I've allowed to be placed upon me. And it's very freeing to be able to think of it like that. And I'm incredibly grateful for the message that I've received today.
And we would even go so far as to encourage people every day, make it a 5-minute practice, because you are what you speak. What comes after those two words, I am, is critical for your future. And I wouldn't discourage anybody from taking 5 minutes a day to make the I am affirmations, because we're always saying, I'm subpar, I'm so low, I don't get any good breaks, I'm this, I'm that. Why not turn that around and for 5 minutes a day say, I am loved, I am a child of the Most High God, I am creative, I am good looking, I am insightful, I am full of brilliance, I am packed full of talents and abilities, I am capable by God's mercy of making a difference in the world, I am a light that can attract other people. Just make a list of all those things that we really are. I mean, this is truth speaking. And speak the truth in the mirror if necessary to ourselves every day, and then just see how that turns everything around for the better. Thank you, Rob. I love your comments. I'm telling you. You are an integral part of this show, and I'm sure everybody out there would agree with me that we value your gem-like summations. And of course, Lakshmi, it goes without saying. I'm sure that all those who joined us through Facebook are appreciative of both Rob and Lakshmi, and let me tell you who they are and how we're appreciative of you also taking time and during the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, to join us. Prashant, with all those quotes that we can review within 8 days. Anjali, our king of comments, queen of comments. Yes, whenever Anjali's on board, we know there's going to be a lot of interesting give and take. Sanjaya, our old friend. Hare Krishna, Sanjaya. Samudura Nandasutta, getting to be a regular on board here. Thank you, Nandasutta Das. Sundari Priya, there are no words. No words. Our jewel, Salt Lake City. Ram Kishore, thank you for those little tidbits of knowledge and for your input. A very wise man from Minnesota. Barbara Wolf, we have 677 mutual friends. Myself and Barbara, a lot in common. Ronnie Chaudhuri, are you the Ronnie of Sanjay and Renu? Renee from Pocatello, let us know if you're that Ronnie, because the last time I saw you, you were just like waist high, you and your sister. Sundar Bhakti Gary, yes, we love you, Bhakti Gary. You can feel the sincerity even through the internet. Rakesh Ji, Jai Ho Rakesh Ji, and his talented daughters. Bobby, my better half. We've been together over 50 years, but our wedding anniversary, our 50-year wedding anniversary, I think is coming up May 17th. Subhadra, Raleigh, we love you, Raleigh. Jean, steady Jean. And Vijaya Lakshmi also. First time, I think, Vijaya Lakshmi. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Lakshmi. And please finish this in the best possible way with some beautiful Sankirtan, chanting the holy names.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai!
Gaura Premanandi.
San Ki Choi! Hari, 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 hari.
Haribo.
Thank you, as always. Thanks, everyone, for joining. They say you're always supposed to end with a call to action. So, what are the various options that you can act? You can like, you can share, you can join. And we also have a new Patreon page also up. If you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, you can get the Patreon link. And some of the benefits of being a Patreon member are that every week on a certain level, you get not only the MP3s, but you get the transcripts of some of our talks and some of our classes. On the basic Patreon level, you get a Back to Guided subscription. So if you don't already have that, then join on the basic level. On another level, you get a talk, a half an hour Zoom call with yours truly every month. And we can together tackle whatever it is that's challenging you in your life, for what that's worth. And on another level of Patreon membership, you get a free room and board every year in Spanish Fort for 1 week. You get to stay and look out the window at the llamas and the parrots and the peacocks and enjoy this beautiful oasis here in Mormon-dominated Utah. Other levels, we send you a whole set of Srimad Bhagavatams, Bhagavad Gita. In other words, we try to partner with you in your spiritual life and try to be the best resource that we can to make sure that you keep moving steadily forward, keeping within vision the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Sad Goswamis, Baladev, Vidyabhushan, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, and all the previous acharyas. So if you'll allow us to do what we can do to partner with you to make all of our lives successful in pure devotional service. Thank you again, everybody. See you tomorrow. Don't forget, this is the countdown. We're now -4, I think, or +4 going down to 0, which is Sunday, the auspicious appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Krishna,
Hare Ram.
Hare Rama, Hare